Like, how do we our tempo in the emergency department is all about, how do we hone in on what's going on right now and get people to where they need to get going, whether discharged or admitted to the hospital. The tempo in the hospital is a little bit over a longer period. However, they also have a certain tempo by which they want to achieve certain goals. And when their expectations of what that tempo is aren't matched with reality, or on the flip side, patients' expectations aren't matched with the tempo that they're receiving from the hospital of progress, there can be friction and there can be a sense of discord and a lot of frustration, and also a lot of things get missed. And when those things get missed, it can set the stage for any number of problems to unfold over the ensuing weeks and months. And so, um, you know, you for those of you who are survivors, you may have woken up in the hospital thinking to yourself, like, what did we just go through? What was this that just happened? Um, I wake up in this strange place, surrounded by these strangers. Many of them are celebrating, like, we just won the big game because I woke up. And they're giving each other secretly all sorts of high fives. But their tempo is such that they're looking to kind of get me out the door so somebody else can deal with my emotions and deal with my questions. They're also getting a pressure from a place like this where I work in the emergency department, where every day we're, bursting at the seams, including with many people who are trying to get upstairs into beds. And so there are conflicting interests. There are doctors that want to do right by patients, but at the same time, they're getting pressure on the floor from the emergency department saying, hey, we need to open up beds, we need to move things along. And this can create kind of a cognitive distance between, what's said, what's felt. And so I think this is the way that we kind of visualize the goodbye from our hospital side. Like, oh, get you in a nice spiffy new set of ironed out clothes, and get you your little, backpack with your paperwork, and everything is nice and neat and clean. And it's all high fives, right? And sometimes it kind of feels like this. I don't know if we have any Seinfeld fans, but Newman was always, trying to kind of getting pushed out the door. But um, from a personal standpoint, one of my family members was recently in the hospital, and I'm acutely attuned to how this can feel with you have unanswered questions or things feel uncertain, and sometimes the hospital just feels like they're geared towards getting you out the car or out the door and into your car. We have around 70,000 survivors of cardiac arrest
Wow.
in hospital and in hospital every year. And we have significant variation in how this discharge process is handled, even within the same community, even within the same hospital system. We have four major public hospitals here in LA County, and the processes vary widely, which is something we've been trying to discuss and improve upon here in our local community. There are many different issues that are present for survivors and for their family members, not to mention bystanders who may have seen something or participated in something incredibly traumatic, and and also need to process that. And so, with these challenges present, and with this heterogeneity, this mix of different approaches that hospitals use and oftentimes fumble with, the American Heart Association several years ago, right as COVID was starting or before COVID started, came out with this AHA scientific statement on survivorship. And not only that, they added an additional rung to the chain of both out of hospital and in hospital survival, focused on recovery and the idea that a win in cardiac arrest isn't just getting pulses back. It's not just surviving to hospital discharge. It's helping everybody process, and it's helping everybody thrive in this. And so, as a guide to accomplish this, one of the things that they provided that has slowly been building up steam and smoke in the hospital world is this checklist, this idea that there are certain things by different uh, people in the hospital, different professionals within the hospital. There are different items that need to be covered for every single patient and for their families as well. And the idea that it's not good enough just to identify that they're physical deficits or cognitive or communication deficits or affective or emotional deficits, but rather we need to do our best to try to engage on these issues and get people started off in the right direction before discharge. At a minimum, describe what some of these issues are unique to each individual patient and give their doctor, who they will be following up with, some indication of the direction to move with this handoff. So our healthcare system is so disjointed that oftentimes people are admitted to one hospital and then they're discharged, but their doctor, if they're lucky enough to have one, doesn't work at that hospital. They may not be privy to the healthcare records. And all that they're left with when trying to help a family is the words of what that family says. And if they're lucky, a little bit of paperwork indicating that, hey, this is what happened during this hospitalization. And it can take months to years to tease that out and help families move in a better direction to meet their needs. So the American Heart Association started to flesh out both short-term, medium-term, middle term, and long-term uh, expectations as well as action plans in order to try to address the needs of patients and families. And with that said, while a lot of these things have been written on in the medical literature, um, what I'm really interested in is for those of you who are here, what your experiences has been with this during the course of your hospitalization or what you can remember of it. Um, what uh, what do you think went well or what do you think could have gone better? And I'll pause right there. And if there's anybody that wants to weigh in, um, this is a safe place to talk, and you are amongst friends. And I'm genuinely interested all of us are genuinely interested in hearing what you have to say.
Steve, I'd like to make a comment, Joe Farrell.
Please.
Um, my arrest was 17 years ago, and I was in a hospital in Rockland, California, and I didn't know any cardiac. Well, I mean, I was in a coma, got in there, and went through the routines with hypothermia, et cetera. But I think what frustrated my wife as a co-survivor, and she had worked in ICUs for a couple of years at Mass General Hospital, so she was highly educated. But she got frustrated with the cardiologist on call because he wanted to discharge me after one day after coming out of a coma of 3 days. I went into, you know, VTAC and 3 episodes, and they wanted to discharge me still. And my wife had to fire the attending cardiologist. And thank the Lord, we had a friend of a friend that knew another cardiologist there. And he was reluctant to take my case because of what you articulated earlier, some conflict of interest between his cardiology group and the other group. Thank the Lord that Dr. Peters took my case and everything turned out great. But there was a lack of communication. That's 17 years ago. I don't know what it's like now, but I keep hearing a lot of survivors say when they get discharged, "Hey, go live your life." That's the
Yeah,
last thing.
yeah.
That's the last thing I wanted to hear. But I was lucky. My new cardiologist who came on board spent 2 hours with me before I was discharged and explained everything. So I just want to show there are some real positive things, but I'm not privy to 2020, 25, because mine was a long time ago.
Gail, I heard your reaction to that.
I didn't
How
mean to laugh, but Joe is very correct. I had my cardiac 11 years ago in Connecticut, and there was no aftercare. There was no plan. I had no idea. I went to rehab for a while, but yeah, maybe it's different now, but I think there really has to be the follow-up plan, because me and my ex, we went out of there driving in the car and we're gone. There was no follow-up, none at all. Yeah, but there or the rehab. So it was uncharted territory. I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. So, yeah, there needs to be a follow-up plan, a very clear, concise one with the caretakers and the survivor.
Deborah,
I'm going to just, if I may, my name is Deborah Mayer. I'm actually live in Connecticut right now, but I'm from Southern California. I worked at Los Robles Hospital and worked with LA EMS and Ventura County EMS, Dr. Chug at Cedars, and Dr. Salvucci, the medical director of Ventura County. And about 15 years ago, working with EMS, I was the pre-hospital care coordinator in the ER at Los Robles. And I saw the need for just what you guys are talking about. There was no aftercare for these poor people. They had cardiac arrest and they go, bye-bye, see your cardiologist. So I started a support group back then. And it is still going. Thankfully for Zoom, I'm able to continue to stay involved. In fact, I got my first Connecticut survivor that's a part of it now. And I have worked with probably over 100 survivors over the years. And from not just from Los Robles, but we've reached out. We got people from LA. And I just saw there was nothing like that within the hospital, a support group for these people. And I've seen what has happened in their lives and transformation to work with each other in these situations. So I can open it up to anybody who would like to be a part of it, because it is now on a WebEx or Zoom. We have cardiologists, social workers. We have so many different speakers that come, and then a lot of it's just letting them, we do stuff for the families. And I don't know of a lot of hospital-based survivor groups, but this one has survived 15 years and a lot of survivors. So I just wanted to share that.
I think that speaks to the need, and also hats off to you. I know Ventura County has become a model around Southern California in many ways, especially for pre-hospital care,
Right.
and so that's fantastic.
Hi there. Karen Oakes. My cardiac arrest was in actually on Valentine's Day 2023, so about 2.5 years ago. And sadly, nothing has changed from what the other people have mentioned. I basically was there for 3 days and then told to go home, and I'd follow up with the cardiologist in 2 weeks, and then I could go to cardiac rehab, and that probably was about 2 months post. I think the biggest thing that I would have liked to know more about was the PTSD that was going to hit me really hard in 3 months. And I didn't really know that's what was happening to me. I thought I was having more cardiac issues. And I even went to the cardiologist, and he's like, "Oh, you're fine. It's probably vagal response," but still not mentioning the mental health that kind of goes along with it. But here in Virginia, I volunteer with compression shock, and I started a group. It's a very small group, but just to kind of share information. And thank goodness for Facebook. But it's kind of sad survivors have to go to Facebook to find their support. But thank goodness for that, because it's a pretty lonely place to be when there's just so much information. You're not sure what's going on.
I agree with Karen very much. So my cardiac arrest was a year and a half ago, last April, and it has not changed any better. I'm in a suburb of Chicago, and if there was not the internet, I don't know where I would have gotten any of my medical information or emotional support. So something needs to be done.
Yeah, I could only echo what everyone else has said. Stephen, I'm based in Australia actually.
Me too.
Thought I'd join today. Sounded like an interesting Zoom, but my arrest was last April as well, 2024, and the care in the hospital was the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. Was very good, but it felt like the day that I was discharged, which was 2 weeks after the arrest, felt like you were getting pushed off a cliff. And you just didn't know if who you could call apart from turning up at the hospital again at ED. You just didn't really know what to do. And at that point, at the time of my arrest, I didn't even realize there was a difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. So you're dealing with a lot of trying to even work out what's actually happened. But yeah, I'd just echo what I think most people's experience has been like.
Like being pushed off a cliff.
Good description. And this might be a time to put in a word for the Cardiac Arrest Survivor Alliance for any of you who are not already in our community. It's an online community to provide support for survivors and co-survivors, lay rescuers, and other advocates. So we invite you to join if you're not already there.
So, Mary, can we share the website to join for this group? Is it casa.hearts.org? Is that the correct one or not?
It's community.casahearts.org.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put that in the chat.
I can speak to a little bit. I'm Fran Lasico, and I'm having some technical issues today, so I hope that you can hear me. I am a 33-year survivor. When I survived, there was like no one. I mean, I had my cardiac arrest in the stairwell of my clinic where I happened to be for a well baby check because I was a new mom. And I didn't drop my son, and he wasn't hurt, but he started crying, which basically saved my life. In some ways, I got a lot of attention because for the clinic and for my hospital system in Minnesota, this was like this amazing story about the baby in the stairwell. And when I would see new providers, they would all have heard this story. They would go, "You're the one in the stairwell." And but at the same time, I didn't get much information. There wasn't anybody else out there. Some of the hospitals, I live in the Twin Cities, and some of the hospitals had set up a support group for people with ICDs, which 33 years ago, the only way you got an ICD was that you died. So it was all cardiac arrest survivors. But when I went to those meetings, I was a new mom, and they were all, now they'd be my peers, but they were all guys over 60. And I was wondering, what this had to do with me. As it happens, I'm a psychologist. And so I muddled through and I found ways to find support and to get help from people and moved on. And I had to focus on my kid and I moved on. But then some years later, I started running into and finding other survivors, especially in Minnesota. And over the years, I've been very interested in the psychological impact on people. And for about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, maybe longer, I got roped into, I was not on Facebook. I kind of came to Facebook late to the game, but I got roped into helping admin a large survivor Facebook group, and then I've been involved in a number of other ways since the pandemic. Jasmine Wiley and Jen Chapp and I have been running some Zoom support groups for survivors and co-survivors. We started out just doing a 1 or 2 time thing, but people kept wanting more, and we just did one earlier this week. But I think what happens is when needs aren't met, people struggle and find ways, and that's where support groups developed. It's how AA developed. It's how the early healthcare support groups started, like with breast cancer survivors. Women felt like they didn't get the support they needed, and so they formed their own groups. And to some extent, that has happened with sudden cardiac arrest, although and it helps fill a gap, but there's not always good communication about them. You have to go to Facebook or find ways or find them wherever you are. And it's been just kind of an ad hoc thing. At the same time, people keep wanting them, so we keep doing them. Um, and I hear stories a lot about people being discharged without much of a clue as to what has happened to them or what to expect psychologically. If they have issues, they think that they're crazy. And so it continues to be really hard for survivors, and there continues to be a real lack of support around psychological, also around cognitive kinds of issues related to anoxia. And I think it makes it really difficult, the recovery process. I'll stop talking now. So
And that's so wonderful of you to have pivoted from your experience to helping others and to sharing. I'd say, even as a physician who works on a daily basis with insurance issues, even if you have good insurance and you haven't been through something as traumatic as a cardiac arrest, navigating your way to mental health support and many of these other services that are needed is incredibly challenging. And under the best of circumstances, it turns out. And so having the expectation that somebody comes out of this and is able to accomplish that, I don't really think that's realistic. And it's certainly
yeah,
not done right by our patients. And I also think that needs may be dynamic over times. Karen was brave enough to share with us what she had been feeling after, 3 months after her discharge, and how her feelings had evolved. And Clayton, I'm sure that your feelings have evolved over the course of the last, year and a quarter, year and a half. Um, and there most likely is there are different types of needs for each of these different phases.
I think that's true. For me, because I'm kind of a person who pushes through things, the first 6 months I was proven to everybody that I was going to survive. And then once I realized and it proved to myself that I was going to survive, I fell apart. But because I knew how to seek out mental health treatment, and because I knew a lot of people in the field, that's how I navigated it. Um, but for many other people, I think that's much harder. I also think that there are so many existential and life and death issues that get opened up by this, that some of them get revisited, even years, decades later. Um, Last fall, I lost my younger sister to cancer, and she had never been sick a day in her life. And I had had sudden cardiac arrest. I've also been through cancer myself, and the I revisited some of those kinds of issues after losing her, and I think that also happens with people because it opens up real life and death and meaning issues.
I agree with you, Fran. This is Joe Farrell again. We're really talking about a journey, everyone, right, Steve? I mean, the journey of survival is huge, and I had 16 great years of no issues, and then last year I had some major issues with ICDs and had to have two major surgeries with lead extractions, and all of a sudden I got smacked in the head, and so that's why I say this is a journey, and it's really stimulated me as chair of the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation to really push the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation. And I don't know, Steve, if you'll probably go into this, so you tell me to shut up if I'm stealing your thunder. But I'm hell-bent on getting together on a national basis guidelines for discharge from sudden cardiac arrest. This is one of my missions in the next year, and Gina, our executive director, and Mary and I have talked about this with you, Steve. And this is like really important stuff. And we want to not just hit major medical centers. Like Fran, you've articulated, you're in the Twin Cities, and I live in Incline Village, Nevada. The nearest decent healthcare I have is 50 miles away. So there's a lot of rural areas we got to hit up on, and that's going to be our mission in 2026 for one of our missions for Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation. And Dr. Sanko is part of our scientific team to work on this. So, Steve, I'll shut up. I didn't steal any of your thunder.
Not at all, but I do see a number of other names on here, and I'd bet dollars to donuts that there are people that, first of all, you're brave enough to log in, to show up today,
Yep.
and you're thinking to yourself, do I want to say something? Do I want to share my experience, or was there something that, there's something that you're considering saying? Feel free to.
I have kind of a, yeah, I'm Anna Lynch. My daughter had a cardiac arrest at 15 at athletic practice. And I'm thinking the adult hospitals could take a lot away from what.
And I'm so sorry, it just started to break up a little bit.
I apologize. I'm trying to catch you, and this is right as I leave work.
I hear you.
And I wanted to hear this, but I think there is something to be said for what they do at children's hospitals. At children's hospitals. We were never without a social worker. We were never without clear explanations. The only place we found a limbo is when we left the hospital, actually finding a peer group for my daughter. We still haven't found one. We've come closer because there are organizations out there that are wonderful, like Ollie Hinkle, but we haven't found a place for her yet.
That's a wonderful point. And I think a lot of us who work in this space, we kind of keep pediatric arrests off, in a little bit of a corner and don't think as much about them. And I am certain that you have hit on something very important here. I bet a lot of our pediatric centers do a much better job of establishing patient accompaniment and guidance. That's something that I actually want to look into now in our community. So thank you for saying that. And for what it's worth, I know on the CASA website we have a young survivors section as well that we'd love to have your daughter engaged with if she hasn't already.
Not terribly comfortable because her situation is different than most people's. But the biggest thing I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage you to contact Morgan Stanley in New York. They're Columbia Press. They were phenomenal. And what they did for their cardiac patients was nothing short of amazing. There are still shortfalls. It wasn't perfect. But they did a lot. They had, a child life team. They had social workers. They had doctors. They had people to answer questions. And it sounds like a lot more than adults get.
I agreed.
This is Karen again. One thing I didn't share about myself is I am a healthcare worker. I'm a nurse educator. I'm a nurse practitioner. And you would think, like, didn't you know the care of a a post cardiac arrest? And it's no, because in my FNP studies, I was not educated on that. And I have to be honest, with educating BSN students in nursing, that is not in the curriculum. So I feel that with all the adults and I think all the residents I had and they just didn't know either. And I think it's just not taught. And so the hospital does not have that plan. And I guess that's why y'all are doing this. And then it seems like with the children that they have more of a plan and know all the needs to help the child, but not only the child, but the family too.
Mark and Deidre, it looked like you guys may wanted to say something.
Yeah, I guess I just have a different perspective. So I had my event last year in June, and I can relate to the sort of the confusion and puzzling it out. Um, I I definitely had that experience. I'm still going through my medical records and finding out what happened, the little details, and piecing it all together. But I just kind of I'm just so grateful to be here at all. And I
Mm.
know that there are better ways to transition out of the hospital and to be discharged. And, maybe not everybody's getting what they need, but we're alive and we got care and we're still here. And I just wanted to say that.
Agreed. Agreed. So, Deidre.
Hi, how are you? Sorry for joining late. In my head, it was 5:30, so I apologize. Um, yeah, I'm curious as to how you would classify a situation where a patient uh, codes during a ablation. Is that considered a sudden cardiac arrest, and does this kind of follow the same protocols?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a there's a subspecialty of cardiology, which is electrophysiology.
Yeah.
And these doctors are frequently in an operating room type setting. And believe it or not, through both their medicines and their interventions, it's not unusual during a procedure for a heart to briefly stop and then to be reanimated.
Yeah.
And the American Heart Associations get with the guidelines. Resuscitation module defines an in-hospital cardiac arrest of cases as cases where somebody gets a chest compression or gets a defibrillation attempt outside of the setting of a controlled OR with an electrophysiologist.
Okay.
I don't know if there are finer points as to if you have a prolonged resuscitation under the care of an EP, if they consider that an in-hospital cardiac arrest. However, going through the trauma of your heart being, in a sense, operated on is no small thing.
Yeah.
And this is something that's, it hits at our core as well. So I'm not sure what your experience was, but this can be something incredibly traumatic as well.
Yeah, it was actually our 15-year-old daughter. So, it was something I understand, obviously, that a lot of things are not revealed until you're actually, in the process of examining the heart. But it was pretty traumatic as we had 95% expected success rate. And, now we're a few years post, she was 15 at the time. But we came home the same day, and to be honest, it was months later because a week later COVID happened, and we're still trying to figure out what was wrong with her and refer to other hospitals, etc. So we never actually really fully processed it. I thought I had misheard. My husband was just like, "Is she okay? Did she, survive?" And so now that we're learning more, and just kind of trying to navigate this. I guess now that we're in more of an acceptance stage.
as a dad to somebody of a similar age to when this happened with your daughter, yeah, I can't imagine. And going back to Mark's point as well, um, I think I think there's a I think it's okay to feel kind of those two different feelings of, gratefulness to have survived the event and to have received the care and have gotten out of the hospital. Um, but also coming together as a community to say, hey, maybe there are opportunities for us to improve care even more as we go along. And I think our collective voices should play not just an important but a central role in that. Your voices should in this process. And this, for example, is the way that the National Cancer Institute and others for different types of infirmities have developed improved patient navigation models is by asking people, hey, what was your experience? And how can we improve it? And really starting with that.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's giving patients more of a voice. That's just how you learn and I guess do it better next time or modify or whatever. So yeah, thank you.
I wanted to transition just a little bit, just to give one example of something we're doing in our community here in Los Angeles to try to address this, and also see if I could seek any feedback from you guys. Let me see if I can find our. All right, can you guys see my slides here?
Yes.
Okay. Um, the just a shout out to some of our colleagues at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, who for many decades now, similar to our colleagues in a few other parts of the country, have excelled in this area, and they've put together a wonderful post-discharge kit that we've learned an awful lot from through our work here in Los Angeles. This is a guide that they offer at time of discharge, I believe, which helps to set expectations along several different areas for patients and their family members. And also has a couple grids where people can use, one packet, all these grids to write down their upcoming appointments and kind of keep all the information in one place. And I think this is an outstanding model and a starting point. For us here in LA, our goal was to kind of move from a paradigm of, the high five and let's go ahead and get you going, to a refocus on building a solid foundation. And so this was our process when we put our minds together and we invited people from many different specialties, from all of our different hospitals who have different groups of patients that they attend to. And ultimately, what we've developed over the course of the last year has been a new expected practice. And I don't have the final date in here because through a final hiccup, this is still pending final approval. However, it's already been implemented at most of our hospitals, the processes related to this. This is an expected practice for our hospital-based teams to try to improve the discharge process. And one of the focuses has been starting with establishing a team, a multidisciplinary team that's not just the internal medicine doctor or cardiologist that may be discharging a patient, but rather having a multidisciplinary team of doctors, nurses, social workers, rehab specialists, financial planners, all in the same virtual room, since that's how we roll in 2025, and reviewing all cases. And so we have standardized documents to help to review all of our cases from the jump, and everybody's involved in this process. And the idea is that certain actions need to be checked off and people need to weigh in for all of our patients that are lucky enough to get discharged. And so we have a checklist that we go through that very much mirrors the checklist from the American Heart Association survivorship statement. And we touch on many of the different needs that are mentioned here from that. We also make a discrete effort to engage family members. And even if we can't, um, uh, if they even if we can't treat all of the issues that are related to this, our goal is to at least help them to understand this has been our experience with other families, with other family members. These are some of the challenges that are coming down the chute. And here are some resources. Can we help you make that first phone call? And if you don't want to follow up, that's your prerogative. Not everybody wants to or has to. People have different ways of through which their resilience is framed. However, if we don't bring it up, then I don't know who else is going to. And so better that we try, right? Um, we had I recall our first our one of our first survivors from a new technology that we used for cardiac arrest treatment. We celebrated his successful discharge, neuro intact survival at discharge, and then I show up to say goodbye to him, and the lines in the medical record said, "Oh, he's got a broad family. They're all in the house and engaged. Wife is there with him 24/7." And it turns out, well, wife is working two jobs, and his family didn't live in the same house. They lived quite distant in LA County, which with traffic included is practically in another state, right? And his there was no attempt to understand that his community was very much based in his church, and that he wasn't going to have access to that. He had a wound vac in that he didn't know how he worked, that he's carrying in a briefcase, and he's got a stack of like 200 pages of papers and basically a pat on the back saying, "Here are 50 medicines that you should figure out how to take throughout the day." Not exactly an inspiring picture of success. We're giving each other high fives. And, he's feeling like Newman on Seinfeld, getting pushed out the door, like, what are we talking about here? And so, I think there has to be a little bit of introspection on our part in the hospital of saying, could we possibly expect this of ourselves and our families, much less anybody else who's been through so much. And that's been one of our struggles to continue to remind ourselves of that. We've also tried to pull together additional culturally sensitive education materials, not least of which is standardized forms that I'll touch on just briefly here. We have mandated that there is a certain degree of assistance that has to be in place in terms of helping to establish follow-up visits, which is particularly challenging because many of our patients aren't impaneled to our hospital. And I know that word impaneling and financial services may be triggering for many of you. It is for me as well when I try to help my patients. But these are, as they say, engineering problems, and we have financial engineers. And so if we can send somebody to the moon, we can make this happen. And we should be able to. The other thing that we included in this expected practice is notification. In 2025, if you ask most hospital executives how many people have an arrest in their hospital or how many they had last year, you're going to get a deer in headlights look, followed shortly thereafter by quoting some kind of numbers or policies that, may be slightly related, and then the quick change of the subject. You don't get to be a hospital administrator without having those kind of skill sets, God bless them. And it's not an easy job, but most people don't know how frequently this happens in our hospitals, even when they're leading the hospital. So we are making a concerted effort at our public hospitals to notify the whole chain of command and let people know, hey, these are our numbers, these are our successes, and help them to see that they have skin in this game as well. And then we have reporting requirements. We've also standardized a number of different templates that we use. For example, if you're discharged now, we have a description of what happened that both you and your primary care doctor will be able to access. And our next step moving forward, the next iteration of this is to create ways to make this in layman's terms so that it's more accessible and understandable to the whole care team, not least of which are our family members and loved ones, if you're lucky enough to have those involved in your care. But that simple piece of paper that one can share with their primary care doctor or outside cardiologist saying, hey, this is what happened. And this was what we did, and this is the plan, and these are the things that need to be addressed in the coming weeks and months. We have a standardized checklist that we're enacting that is now enacted in at least two of our hospitals for a certain set, and each one of these actually has a sub checklist. And then finally, we have resources, including connecting our patients to CASA Hearts, which, as Mary mentioned, is a free and password protected online, no advertisement site that many of you are already familiar with in order to share and learn from each other about what's going on. We have a discharge handout to just touch on some of the issues that we know are going to come up, and we've been able to get this translated into Spanish, Korean, and Chinese as well, which is important in the community where I serve. That said, I want to pause here for just a second and elicit people's thoughts and feedback on that approach. This was born out of a meeting like this in March of 2023 when I gave a similar presentation on discharge practices and subsequently roped a whole bunch of people into trying to rack our brains as to how we could start to form this process. It's far from perfect, but we think it's a start. Mark, I saw you had your hand up or were nodding. Anybody else, any feedback or thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I actually had two cardiac arrests on the same day, and I just noticed in the template it said singular cardiac arrest. So it is possible to have more than one.
Yeah, and in fact, having had one in the field is one of your biggest risk factor for having one in the hospital, and it's not uncommon that you may have multiple times where you lose pulses before you even get admitted to the ICU or go to the cath lab. And so, let me ask you this. Were you surprised to learn that from your paperwork afterwards, kind of wading through the documentation, or did you feel like your care team was transparent about everything that happened? That had happened?
I did. Well, the first one I had was I was walking to my gym, so I was outside of a hospital. And at first I didn't, so I was brought to the hospital as someone who had fallen down. And so really so that was the first cardiac arrest. The second one was in the ER. So they knew that that was a cardiac arrest, but the one that I suffered outside the hospital was sort of hazy. They didn't realize that's what had happened, but eventually it all kind of came together and we realized that's what had happened. But yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, I have a couple comments if that's okay, or unless you want to let someone else talk.
100%. Joe, please.
Um, Mark, I had two cardiac arrests also. I had one at a friend's house, and then as I got in the cath lab, I arrested again. So we have a little bit in common there. Steve, I think this is an excellent start by you and your organization. It's just super. I just one of the things that I would really have would have liked and this is a long time ago, 17 years ago. But my question is, sounds like a great multidisciplinary team. Who's the quarterback of that? One. Number two, if I have an arrest in your system and I have an issue, who can I call where I don't have to go through, the message machine of 10 options and I could get to a human being in less than 10 minutes? My two questions of that. And I think that's important. Third one is there's a lot of people, and I was one of them, that their diagnosis as to why I had a cardiac arrest was idiopathic. And I hear this over and over and over. So I think an explanation, I might have missed that in your appendices, of, so it's sometimes very hard to diagnose. And anyway, those three items. Thank you.
In one of C.S. Lewis's book, I don't know if it's Out of the Hidden or the Hidden Planet or Out of the Silent Planet or forgive me. is we use biggest words and obscure languages to describe the things that we understand the least. And so the word idiopathic means we don't know. We have no idea. We did all the tests and nothing, it didn't, we weren't able to arrive at a conclusion, which makes us feel better because we put a name on it. And it's one of the most disconcerting things to know and feel. And the truth is that we don't have the answers for everything. We try to identify things that we can mitigate or treat, but there's still a lot of things that we don't know. And there are some circumstantial things that can prompt somebody to go into cardiac arrest, which is all the more frightening, right?
Mm-hmm. I have a question about the toolkit. Is it available now? Or are you still putting it in? Are you processing it or adding? Where does it stand now? Like, could a doctor write to you and say, "Oh, I'd like that toolkit," and take it themselves and have some knowledge? How does that work on a hospital point? I guess you'd say.
Yeah, so ours is going through final approval. We have a number. You could imagine bureaucracy in a place like Los Angeles. There are, people on top of people on top of people who, signatures and whatnot. Over the years, we've gotten a little bit more agile. We're still waiting for one of our other committees to give final sign off. I anticipate this being our ultimate final product. And that said, we've already started to enact a lot of these processes and changes with the thought process that it's going to take months and years to accomplish and truly institutionalize some of these. However, we anticipate final passage here in September. And I'm happy to share with you or your physician team or anybody what we have. I would also highlight, though, that the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation has pulled together a work group under Gina and Joe and Mary's leadership, together with a number of other subject matter experts that we have from around the country to try to incorporate different models, not just the LA model or the Pittsburgh model, but others. And I anticipate that being the more useful product to share with hospitals, but that's going to be a months long effort.
Yeah,
And
are you finding out that every hospital in every state is making their own model, and where you maybe all should come together under one umbrella? Everyone keeps reinventing the wheel when you've got such great evidence now to start working on.
Yeah, I think more concerning what my experience has been, and we have 90 hospitals in LA County, is
Yeah.
it's only a very small handful of maybe two or three that are thinking about formalizing these types of processes. So there's certainly other hospitals around the country that are doing this or maybe have done it in a way that is highly effective in their context. The AHA state, but it's not on the radar for most hospitals. And the AHA took a huge step forward with this survivor's statement a few years ago. What we are seeing now is that and this is one last thing I wanted to touch on as we get towards the end of the hour. In fact, if you don't mind, maybe I can just share my screen one last time, and then I'll shut up. But the so the American Heart Association also just recently put out their goals for cardiac arrest outcomes for all communities in the United States to be achieved by the end of calendar year 2030. And these include process-centered measures like improving bystander CPR to greater than 50%, improving AED access, but then also importantly, patient-centered outcomes like neuro-intact survival for adults and kids for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, as well as in-hospital cardiac arrest. And the way we've gone about this in Los Angeles is we have a countywide task force. We have about 20 members of it from different jurisdictions and different specialties, clinical and non-clinical. And we've created and put out performance reports for all of our 911 fire departments. All 911 emergency medical services in LA County are performed by fire departments in our community. And then we've shown them their gap where they are now and where they need to be by 2030. And secondly, we've prompted them to build a team and to make a plan. If you're not at these goals, well, how are you going to get there by 2030? And through that process, and we're not just doing it for fire departments, we're doing it for the hospitals as well. And one of the things that we're doing to help them along, because I've noticed that people like doing their homework a lot better when they don't have to think about it and they can get guidance. We've had a series of clinics that we are arming and that we'll be administering over the next 6 months for both the fire departments as well as the hospitals in order to offer them guidance on crafting their plan and also saying that, hey, this plan also has to be signed off by your C-suite and or your public safety committee in the case of the fire departments. And then one of the things that we're including for them is that they should have discharge best practices implemented based on the AHA survivorship statement. And we can offer our public hospital system expected practice as a model, but at the end of the day, they know their business better than we do, and they need to simply implement something that works best for them. But also is patient-centered and helps to accomplish the goals of setting patients up for success and their families. That was a long-winded way of answering, I think, what you were getting at, and so I apologize.
Does anybody else have more comments before we close?
This is Karen again. I just want to say thank you for doing this great work. I think it's wonderful, and I hope it can spread over to the East Coast.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, so much. This has been really informative, and I think we all appreciate your wisdom and guidance in this area. Thanks for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I wish you all the best. Continue to share your stories. It's not only important for others, but it's important for us that we tell these stories, and it helps us to grow from them in a positive way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks.
Thank you.